Is sake sweet or dry? Sake is often described as a dry drink. So if you are used to wine, you probably expect dry to mean not sweet. But when you taste sake, it often feels softer, sometimes even slightly sweet. So why does this happen?
To understand this, let's first look at how sweetness works in wine. In wine, sweetness mainly depends on two things. The first is the amount of sugar left after fermentation. The second is acidity. Acidity makes a drink taste fresher and sharper, and it can reduce how sweet the drink feels. So even if two wines contain the same amount of sugar, the one with higher acidity will usually taste less sweet. This balance between sugar and acidity is the basic structure of how sweetness works in wine.
But sake has another important characteristic that wine usually has much less of. That is umami. Umami is a savory taste that mainly comes from amino acids. During sake brewing, many of these amino acids are produced. Compared to wine, sake contains much more umami. This gives sake a rounder, softer texture and a richer taste. It can also make the drink feel slightly sweeter on the palate. So when we compare wine and sake, the difference becomes much clearer. In wine, sweetness is mainly shaped by sugar and acidity. If acidity is high, the wine feels fresher and sharper, and the sweetness feels lower. Sake is different. The amount of sugar in sake is usually not very high. In fact, it is often similar to an off-dry wine. But sake has much lower acidity than wine, so there is less acid to balance the sweetness. At the same time, sake contains much more umami. Umami adds roundness and softness to the taste. Because of these differences, sake can feel softer and slightly sweeter than wine drinkers expect.
But this characteristic of sake is actually one of its strengths. Because of its umami, sake pairs extremely well with food. Umami helps the drink blend naturally with many different dishes. Instead of overpowering the food, sake often supports the flavors on the table. That is one reason why sake works so well as a drink with meals.
So is sake sweet or dry? In reality, sake is usually not a very sweet drink. But compared to wine, sake often feels softer and slightly sweeter. This is because sake has lower acidity and much more umami. These elements change how sweetness is perceived. So when tasting sake, dry and sweet are not always simple. The real character of sake comes from the balance of sweetness, acidity, and umami. Discovering this balance is one of the joys of sake.